Hey, everybody, we will get started in just a moment. Thank you for joining us today.
Live from the world headquarters of RT America in our nation's capital, this is the news with Rick Sanchez.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez, and I want to welcome all of you who are watching us from all over the world, including those of you who are watching on your mobile phones using the portable TV app. Three major American banks are stockpiling money over fears the coronavirus recession could get even worse. Let me tell you who they are. JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Citigroup have all set aside almost $30 billion that they say is going to be there to try and cover loan payments that Americans are increasingly unable to make. Those loans include credit card debt that Americans aren't making, business loans, mortgages in forbearance that are sometimes being delayed, in some cases up to a year, that people are telling their banks, look, I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage for at least 6 months, in some cases a year, depending on the bank, depending on the terms. Joining us now to talk about this is Jason Hartman. Jason is the founder and the CEO of Platinum Properties Investment Network. He's also a very prolific investor in his own right. I guess the takeaway here, Jason, is that banks are looking like they're getting stingy with their money and about to become even more stingy down the line. Am I reading this properly?
Yes, Rick, during the Great Recession, everybody blamed the banks for being too liberal in their lending guidelines and giving out a bunch of liar's loans and ninja loans, meaning, no income, no job, doesn't matter, right? And so now the banks are being more conservative. There's no question about it. Even as they have stockpiled between the three big banks that you mentioned, about $28 billion, we are seeing mortgage applications for both purchases and refinances go through the roof. I mean, consumers, homeowners and home buyers cannot resist these low rates. It's causing an artificial boom in the housing market. And there's a lot of repositioning, as we talked about when I was on with you prior, people moving to the suburbs. But one of my fears is that we'll see what we had seen happen after the Great Recession, or even during, is this, this kind of vicious circle, this cause and effect, where the banks overcorrect. On one side of the pendulum, it swings back and forth, right? They're too liberal, and then they become overly conservative, and then that hurts the housing market, hurts the economy overall. So that's one of the things we need to be mindful of, is that let's hope they don't overcorrect. It is good that they're being careful, for sure, but overcorrection is just as bad.
I got invited by Jason Hartman himself, the man. And basically, I've been really enjoying it. I actually have 5 doors already in Seattle. And the event has been fabulous. I've learned a ton of stuff already. Jason and his entire crew have been a fabulous inspiration, as well as educational in areas that I thought I was educated in, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And so it's been a great time. And I'm definitely going to probably be investing in a couple of these properties, because there's some great deals here and some great opportunities for me to get both some tax savings as well as some equity investments.
Hi, this is Diane Kennedy. I'm a CPA, and I'm so excited to be here at Meet the Masters. I'm getting the opportunity to talk to real estate investors from all over the country, in fact, all over the world. And they're learning about tricks to put more money in their pocket, to find some amazing deals. Wow, I'm so glad I came.
Let's talk about the final 10th commandment, right? Now, we do have, as I mentioned before, an additional 10 commandments, but these are the original 10. And this one is about taxes. Now, a lot of people get really bored when I talk about taxes at our real estate conferences. Their eyes roll back in their head and they think, taxes, that's so boring. It's such a boring subject. But what you need to realize is that taxes are the single largest expense in most people's life, right? They are the single largest expense. We'll spend a lot of time and a lot of effort shopping for a new car, getting a good deal, even on a piece of real estate, right? We'll put a lot of effort into that. But we won't put any effort at all into saving on the single largest expense in life, taxes.
you will, just in income taxes, give away anywhere between probably 30 and 55% of your income in just income tax, right? Just income tax.
All right, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing today? I hope all is well. So get your questions, post your questions and your comments, and we will get to them. You know, last time, I think we got through all the questions, but the time before that, after 2 hours and 20 minutes, we did not get through all of them. And I will not have as much time to stay with you today because I am going boating this afternoon. I live in the boating capital of the entire world. Got to get out on the water a little bit. So get your questions and comments in early. Just post them below. So we will get to those. Our guest today is my friend Mike. Mike, how are you? I don't know if can you hear us? We can't hear you, just so you know. So we'll get Mike back on here. Hopefully he'll figure out his technical stuff and we'll be able to talk to him. But I've got a few news items to go through with you here to kick us off today. So first off, and Mike, I hope you can fix your sound there. First off, I'm going to share the screen back again. What am I doing here? There we go. First off, 9/11, of course, it seems like every year, sadly, it kind of starts to fade into the memory. And this year with COVID 1984, we saw that even more so, sadly. But let's never forget 9/11. It was a terrible tragedy. And as I wrote in my email newsletter, by the way, if you're not a subscriber, it is totally free and it is getting better and better. I'm starting to enjoy that. I never really did an email newsletter before. As I wrote in my email newsletter that went out yesterday, I'm not prone to entertaining too many conspiracy theories. Once in a while, I do a few of them, but I tell you, 9/11, some of those seem reasonably credible. And I don't think it's an all or nothing thing with this kind of stuff, right? We'll probably never know what really happened, but it's not an all or nothing. It might have been a complicity thing rather than one or the other. But there are certainly a lot of legitimate questions from that camp, and usually I think these people. Mike, we can hear you, Mike. You're there. Usually I think these people are kind of nutty, some of these conspiracy theorists, but on this one I gotta say some of these theories sound fairly credible. But in either case, let's just never forget that horrific day. Probably all of us remember exactly where we were when we first heard about it. We remember who we were talking to, what we were watching, what room we were in, what environment we were in, and I'll certainly never forget that as well. Okay, Mike, welcome. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you for mentioning 9/11. I remember I was in Manhattan. I live in New York, and I actually saw the first building disappear in the smoke. When the smoke cleared, we were on the roof of a building in Midtown, kind of watching it, and it was just heartbreaking.
You actually saw it in person, huh?
Well, we were aware that the buildings were hit. We got on the roof of the Midtown building where I worked then, and we were just all observing from the rooftop. And there was a lot of smoke above the buildings. And I remember seeing the building, then the smoke, and then smoke cleared, and there was no building.
Wow, unbelievable! Just unbelievable. So, did you see the first or second airplane crash?
Of course we couldn't. Of course we didn't. We were notified. Well, we heard that a plane crashed into World Trade Center, and then after that, when the second one took place, at that point it became pretty clear something was going on. Mm-hmm. So I didn't hear the crash, obviously.
Well, it must have been just really, really scary living in New York at that time, for sure. Anyway, we've just got to remind ourselves about it every year. This year they almost canceled the ceremonies, as I'm sure you heard and everybody heard. But let's just never forget that. Really never forget it. Anyway, Mike, welcome. It's good to see you. And just move your microphone away just an inch further away from your mouth if you can. Just maybe down toward your chin, possibly. Yeah, it's just a little hot sounding. I want to get to some items here, some news items, and Mike is going to talk to us about a bunch of interesting things. Hotel conversions, which is kind of the hot new trend in the real estate market, with the hospitality industry literally collapsing right before our eyes. This is a very uneven situation, what's happened to the economy, as we all know, and with unemployment and so forth. We'll get to that. We're going to talk about opportunity zones, which I've largely avoided the whole opportunity zone thing. I think it's highly overrated. There's a lot of scams going on, and I think, unfortunately, there's just a lot of promoters out there doing bad things, as with everything. That's true of everything in life, not just real estate, not just stock market, not just opportunity zones, but there's just bad stuff everywhere. So you got to be careful. If you need us, of course, reach out at jasonhartman.com. If you're in the United States, and we do have listeners and followers from all over the world, but if you're in the US, you can call us at 1-800-HARTMAN. Actually, the good old-fashioned phone. Sometimes it's just nice to actually talk to someone directly, and you can catch any of our team members. But we do have listeners and viewers in 189 countries worldwide. I think it depends who you ask, but I think there's like 196 countries in the world. So we've almost got them all. I can't wait to welcome our first North Korean listeners and Cuban listeners when those countries open up, which hopefully that won't be too long. Communism is a terrible thing. And Mike, you can speak to that because you grew up under it partially. Thank you to all of those of you who reached out about my dog, Coco. She was sick. She was released from the ICU. And, as I talk a lot about monetary policy and currency, and it's not called money, it's currency. That's what we have in every country in the world. We have currency, not money. Money is something that has intrinsic value. Currency is, as they call it, fiat currency. Fiat, that word means by decree or by authority. Something has value because the government says it does, whether it's the yen or the euro or the dollar or the peso or the Brazilian real or whatever it is, right? As Coco was in the hospital, and I was so scared and so fearful that I would lose her. She's only 7 years old, and I got her when she was 8 weeks old from the animal shelter in Tempe, Arizona. Someone surrendered a litter of 5 puppies, and my dog had just passed away about a month earlier. And I've had 5 dogs in my life, and I've never gotten one from a breeder or anything like that. I always want to adopt a dog. And so I thought, well, I should start looking. And my first visit to that animal shelter, someone had surrendered a litter of 5 puppies. And I never had a puppy before. And they had a raffle because everybody wanted the puppies, of course. And so I put my name in. They said, come back Monday morning at 11 a.m. and we will do the raffle. I come back Monday morning at 11 a.m. There's a whole bunch of people there for these puppies. There were 5 of them, and I got picked first. So I literally got the pick of the litter, and I adopted this dog 7 years ago, or almost 8 years ago now, and she's been great. And you want your dog to last, a dog this size to last 14, 15 years, or hopefully even longer. And anyway, so she's busy making platelets. And I tell you, when I talk about currency, different currencies in life have different value. And if you were to ask me Friday, what was the most valuable currency to me, it wasn't dollars, it wasn't anything else, it was platelets. Because this dog was checked into the emergency room with only 3,000 platelets. But fortunately, in the next day or day and a half, she made 133,000 more. So she was good enough to be released. And we still are not sure what's going on with her, but hopefully she will have a speedy recovery. But thank you to all of you for your prayers and your well wishes. As far as the environment we're in with COVID and so forth, I think a lot of people are falsely, and Mike, please chime in on any of this stuff, by the way. I think a lot of people are falsely thinking that, number one, a vaccine will come, right? We don't even know. Maybe there will never be a vaccine that's effective now. Of course, Russia's out with a vaccine, and maybe there will be an effective vaccine. We don't know. But then we have this whole other stream of issues going on after that. And if you look at this chart on the screen, it says the nationalities most eager to take a COVID-19 vaccine. The percentage of those who would agree or disagree to take a vaccine if it was available. And in China, they're pretty worried over there. And of course, they're brainwashed by the government more than we are. We're brainwashed by government and corporations and disgusting George Soros. But that's another matter for maybe another show for another day. But in the US, look at the US here, right? 67% would take the vaccine, 33% wouldn't. And by the way, these don't always add up to 100% because there's some rounding going on and probably some people that say they're not sure. But would it be mandated by law? What would the anti-vaxxers do, et cetera, et cetera? So even if there is a vaccine, even if it is safe, even if it is effective, which are, huge questions, right? There's a huge debate going on over vaccine safety and autism and side effects and all the rest, blah, blah, blah. We won't get into that. But, it's not like it's going to instantaneously solve the problem. So even if it is safe, even if it is effective, how long does it take to get 7.5 billion people vaccinated, right? So this is going to be a long road, folks. This is not changing, in the fall or next year or whenever. This is going to be a long slog. And even after COVID-1984 is a memory, what's going to be the next thing? I've theorized that there is going to be a PTSD, a post-traumatic stress disorder, with us for possibly an entire generation with this. I think this is a game changer. It's totally significant. It's influencing so many parts of the economy, certainly the real estate market. And of course, I was the first one out there in the media to predict this mass migration to the suburbs. Now everybody's talking about it. But back in February, nobody except yours truly was talking about it. So Mike, any thoughts on vaccine or communism? Because I did allude to communism, and you grew up in Moldova, right?
Yeah, I grew up in the former Soviet Union. It was still Soviet Union when I left. Yeah.
The Eastern Bloc. When did you leave, by the way? What year?
89.
1989. Yeah. So it was about a year and a half later, maybe, that Moldova became more democratic, right?
Yeah, Soviet Union collapsed in 91. So democratic, it's all relative. They're all theoretical democracies, but most of those countries have kind of a dominant party and dominant rule. And technically they are democracies, practically they are dictatorships. Most of them. Right. There are exceptions, obviously. Just
what do you think, Mike, about so many millennials embracing socialism or and its ugly big brother communism nowadays? I mean, are they out of their mind, or what's going on there?
It is the brainwash of the 21st century. Too many young people don't understand what socialism, communism is, and I don't have to go far. My oldest daughter, she's wonderful, very, very smart girl. Love her very much, but she is a Bernie Sanders fan, and she's been a little too liberal, and she's accepted a lot of these socialistic values. And in my view, she's completely wrong. But she needs to grow out of it. She needs to understand. She needs to start paying taxes. She needs to get into the system to understand that the socialism and communism are utopian systems, and they tax you, they take your money, and they redistribute the wealth into their pocket. That's how it works, under the goodwill and the good intentions of helping those in need. That's how those dictatorships work. They enrich themselves first, and then they throw crumbs at the masses, and then they claim that they've helped the masses and took the money from the rich. It just doesn't work. I mean, we have examples here in New York City. I mean, we have a complete idiot mayor who is just a disaster of humongous proportions, and he's just trying to destroy the city.
I've got a video by the way, maybe we'll even share it on the stream today. I've got it queued up if you want to watch about your idiot mayor. And I cannot believe him. I mean, he's just out of his mind. He is openly, just no bones about it. We've got to redistribute wealth, which is that's a really
and
scary
his
thing.
wife is redistributing the wealth by taking a ton of money into the projects that she's basically running, and they can't account for money. There's all kinds of corruption that's happening with his wife, and they even talking about when he retires or he can't run anymore, his wife to run. It's just plain corruption. It is corruption to the nth degree. That's all it is. It's just the grab of power so they can spend the money to their cronies, to their friends, and run the projects that's supposed to help communities. In reality, they help themselves, and then they throw pennies at the masses and then claim to help them. It's just a corrupt, inefficient, completely wrong system, and the minds of the young are easily attracted to these wonderful ideas. And that's why the millennials just love the idea of helping those in need, helping minorities, helping. There are much better ways to help minorities and those in needs. But that's my thoughts on the communism. And on the vaccine, listen, I'm not, healthcare professional. My wife is, and everything I heard is that we're not really going to have an effective, well-prepared society until the end of 2021. By the end of 2021, there will be some level of effective vaccine. There might be a few revisions and iterations of vaccine. Obviously, China and countries like Russia, they can produce a vaccine at the discretion of the Communist Party or the leadership, and they make an order and there is a vaccine. Whether it's a safe vaccine and it's been properly tested is another discussion. So in the United States, with the proper testing, I believe by end of 2021, we'll have a reasonable solution. There will be a phasing of more confidence over months of 2021. So even if we have something in 2020, it's going to be completely not effective. It's going to have very little impact this year. It will start having impact gradually, incrementally next year. And as you know, it needs to be given to those who are at risk first. So as it's applied to the elderly or other ones who are at risk, and it proves to be effective with them, then a greater population can take it. Many people don't need a vaccine. If you're young and healthy, you don't need a vaccine. If you think about it, you could take it, but you follow the statistics. If you're young and healthy, it's just like a regular flu. The fear factor is high, but we won't get high confidence for many months. So just buckle up.
Mike, comment on your daughter and the millennial and now the Gen Z generation. Hopefully, with Generation Z, the one coming after the millennials, usually there's a pendulum that swings back and forth, and hopefully that one will swing in the right direction. And as far as this mentality and the thinking, but they've been so brainwashed with our pathetic public schools in this country and our pathetic universities. It's really quite disturbing. But like Winston Churchill said many years ago, he said, if you're under 40 and you're not a liberal, you don't have a heart. If you're over 40 and you're not a conservative, you don't have a brain. So, and liberal conservative is really just the spectrum of communism to free market. That's all that is. But hey, Mike, looking at the chart on the screen, let's get a couple comments. I got a few things to discuss here, and then I want to go over your presentation a little bit, some of the slides you brought to us. This is the labor market showing signs of recovery, and this is actually pretty significant. I was studying something this morning, and do you know the average tenure for a worker in the U.S. is 4.2 years. The average tenure for an employee in Germany is 10 years. And one of the things that makes the U.S. Such a dynamic economy is that when you hire someone, it's not very, I don't want to say it's very easy, but it's easier than these silly socialist European countries to let them go if they don't work out, right? So employers aren't as fearful of hiring somebody. They'll try more things. They'll take more risk. in the U.S. because, you can actually fire somebody here, right? Which, probably not without a lawsuit and not without a lot of problems. And if you live in a business unfriendly state, it's going to be a lot harder. But if you live in a business friendly state, or your company's in a business friendly state, I should say, it's actually not too bad. And it makes the U.S. employment market far more dynamic than these European markets. So things are bouncing back a little bit, and it's nice to see. I mean, we're definitely moving in the right direction. Do you have any thoughts about that? And maybe before you even speak, I'll go to the next slide and put the stock market up here, because these things are certainly connected. And the question is, are we in a stock market bubble? A lot of people have asked this. Here we're looking at the Wilshire 5000, which is a really broad index compared to the GDP. And this is nominal GDP. Nominal, of course, means in name only. Real GDP, on the other hand, would be adjusted for inflation, right? So just you have to kind of adjust for that in your mind. But nonetheless, this is widely known as the Warren Buffett indicator, right? And he says when this gets out of whack, you're in for a correction. Mike, so whether it be employment, the last slide, or stock market, thought I'd open that up for discussion.
Sure. Hard to say. As you heard me speak, my crystal ball broke a long time ago. I'm looking for another one. It's hard to say.
Crystal ball.
Yeah. It's the recovery appears to be real. At least has been V-looking like recovery. However, the recovery hasn't been equal. So there've been winners and losers. If you follow even the stock market. Off top of my head, 2/3 of the stock markets are still below, or well below their peak value when the whole thing started, versus the 1/3 that shot through the ceiling. So the Amazons, the technology companies, the Zooms have done extremely well, and then the cruise lines and the hotel operators and many other ones are in severe distress. So the economy has greatly separated the winners and the losers. In aggregate, yes, it looks like we are back, and the virus hasn't really hurt the stock market from when it started its unhappy dance in late February. But my view is that it does feel like it's bubbly. It does feel like the pricing is supported by Fed action a lot more than the real economic recovery. Obviously, the Fed action has been absolutely staggering. They've injected a lot of liquidity into the markets, and they've cut the rates. The debt service have dropped for a lot of corporations who were tied to the short-term rates, and then the real estate has been greatly supported. That's why we've seen a boost in residential real estate, because the rates have dropped so much, limited supply. So it feels like we are in an acceleration phase of the market, while it's a temporary. So the interest rates are where they are, but there is going to be no more room to go other than into negative rates. So the next round of economic troubles will have the Fed will have no dry powder to use, and I don't think they'll be able to raise rates going forward. So we are in an environment where we're doing well. There's been a lot of government support in the form of helicopter money. It is not real jobs. It is just subsidies of some kind of sorts. And right now it is needed, but the moment we go past election, and depending on how the election goes, if there are no more $1 trillion checks plus are written, we may see the beginning of a real recession. So there is a risk of kind of call it recessionary cliff, unless there's continuous giveaways. They're calling it COVID. One of these Democratic mayors or governors said, no crisis should go to waste. Meaning
that was Rahm Emanuel, but that originally came from Winston Churchill, by the way. People often mistreat that. He was only repeating Winston Churchill. But yeah, go ahead.
The point is they want to take advantage of this and go on a wild spending spree. throwing the money into very inefficiently run blue states and blue cities who have run their economies very irresponsibly, and they need continuous support. Once that support on a federal level runs out, there's going to be serious budgetary problems. And again, we haven't yet seen a great recession. The government actions have kicked the can down the road, but we're still at risk of some level of recession in 2021.
Yeah, good stuff. And I wish I had a chart here to share of all the money creation and the Fed's balance sheet, because it is absolutely insane the amount of money that has been created out of thin air. And that's what Mike is referring to when he talks about helicopter money. Ben Bernanke, our former Federal Reserve Chair, gave a speech where he said, if the economy needs stimulation, I'll just go up in a helicopter and drop money. So that's a famous reference that you were making. So good stuff. Let's grab a couple of questions real quick if we can, and then we'll jump into your slides, Mike, and I want to see those. So by the way, folks, when you post your questions, it's great. I forgot to mention, please post your city. A couple of you did that automatically. Please tell us where you're located. It's just always kind of nice to understand that when you're posting as well. So Paul says, and by the way, I'm going to paraphrase your questions because it just makes it easier for the listeners, but it's up on the screen, or the viewers. My siblings and I have inherited 2 single-family homes from our parents' trust, free and clear. How would you set up the entity partnership to divide rental properties and do tax returns every year in LLC? Okay, so first off, I need to make my usual disclaimer. I am not an attorney and I am not a tax advisor, and neither is Mike. Unless, Mike, you had a law degree or you're a CPA and you didn't tell me. But you are a really good financial guy, I can tell you that. So probably an LLC, but if those properties are in cyclical markets, you might want to sell them, because one of the wonderful things about our tax law is, as I understand it, by the way, please double check everything I say when it comes to this stuff. I'm not an expert, but when parents pass, the basis gets stepped up to market value. So you can sell those properties if you check that out with your CPA and your tax advisor. You can sell those properties without paying capital gains tax, and then you can reinvest maybe separately from your siblings, and then you can just keep it all separate, go your own way, do what you want in good, solid, linear markets, the markets we like, and you can see all those at jasonhartman.com. Click on the properties page. These are markets that have really good cash flow and really good characteristics. So I would consider that before you worry about entities and so forth. But likely, an LLC, and then you would each have your membership units in that LLC. Okay. So thank you for that question, Paul. Okay. This one is from SCSU 300. Good morning. This is Jason. Are you another Jason? From Smoky, Seattle. Boy, these wildfires are absolutely tragic, what's going on the West Coast. And this is just a reflection of, obviously this isn't the question, this is my commentary. This is just a reflection of bad forest management and environmentalists that they're just ruling the roost and causing bigger problems than they should. I remember in the 90s, the Arrowhead fires, or the early 2000s, the Lake Arrowhead fires up near Big Bear, Lake Arrowhead, Southern California. And, that really happened because the environmentalists got in the way and would not allow the Forestry Service to clear the brush under the trees, which made for excellent kindling for the fire. And that's what made that fire so robust. Now, I haven't studied these particular wildfires that are going on in any degree of detail, but that problem usually goes back to these misguided environmental policies, which temporarily, they'll protect the bug or the beetle or whatever it is that lives in that brush under those trees, but ultimately they create a much bigger problem. So, I'm really sorry you're having to go through that. Breathing air right now in San Francisco or the Oregon coast or anywhere along the Pacific Northwest is, I hear it's just really, really bad. So best of luck to you there. The question is, what is a good percentage to have in reserve for each rental property, each single family home? Thank you for sharing lots of valuable information. Hey, our pleasure. Thank you for following us and listening. And hopefully you're listening to the podcast as well. A good reserve requirement is 4% minimum, at least 4% of the value of your portfolio. So for example, if you have 10 single family homes and they're worth $100,000 each, you have a $1 million portfolio, you should have at least 4% or $40,000 in the bank in reserve for unexpected problems, vacancies, repairs, etc. Okay, now that's the minimum. And you can certainly go over that, but don't go too far over that, because remember, when your money's in the bank, it's not working for you. It is getting eaten alive by taxes and inflation. And of course, you're getting, essentially zero interest rate, zero returns on that money. So you want to make sure your money is working for you. When it's in the bank, it's losing its value through taxes and inflation. So maybe you go to 6 or 7%, but over that, get your money invested. Now, the only other consideration you'd want to have there is if your properties are very old and they haven't been renovated, if they're in disrepair, then you're going to have a higher contingency budget for problems and so forth. Okay, so hope that helps, and thank you for the question. Mike, if you want to chime in on any of these questions, feel free to, but let's jump into your slides. Okay, oh, we got Paul's and we got that one. Okay, yeah, we got those. Any comments? You're an investor, so feel free to comment away.
4% is a good rule.
Okay, good stuff, good stuff. Okay, Mike, I am going to share your slides on the screen here.
Sure.
And we'll get those going here. Okay, coming up. Okay, here we go. And there we go. Okay, let's talk a little bit. First of all, explain what you do. And let's go into one of the hot things going on now, which is hotel conversions. Now, this wouldn't be of interest to our typical investor or typical client, but it's something that's interesting, and I just wanted you to come on and share it and talk a little bit about all these problems and pitfalls with opportunity zones as well.
Yeah, appreciate that, Jason. So I'm a fund manager. We have a family of funds, a growth fund, an income fund, a growth and income fund, and as you saw first, the Tempo Growth Fund is our flagship growth fund, and we invest into growth projects that have a value-add component, and a hotel conversion to affordable housing is certainly one of the asset classes. And we're going to talk about a deal we literally just funded. I believe it is a significant trend that has come as a result of COVID, that has dislocated the market significantly for the hospitality industry. Many hotels are just dysfunctional. So they create an opportunity. Somebody else's distress is another man's opportunity. And the opportunity here is to convert them to affordable housing. Many cities, whether they are liberal or conservative, need affordable housing. So the concept is very straightforward. If there can be, and you are an investor, you can acquire a hotel at a good price, and it does require specialization and experience. This is not for average Joe to just come in and try to buy the local motels and try to convert. It does need research, it does need legal team, it does need negotiating ability, and so on. But on the high level, if you're a competent operator where you invest with a competent operator who is able to identify a great price, acquire the hotel well below the reconstruction cost, and convert it to affordable multifamily housing, it could be a slam dunk. And the conversion process of a hotel to affordable housing could be 12 to 18 months. So it doesn't take that long to go through the process, including the full conversion work as well as the lease up. and in 18 months you could have a fully functional affordable housing asset. So here's an example.
So basically, this is converting hotels to low income affordable apartments, right?
Exactly that. So the slide before,
okay.
just a disclaimer, this is educational purposes only. I'm not licensed to give any kind of advice, and I don't play one on TV, and this is not solicitation to sell. If you're interested in one of our funds, request PPM. That's the only offering document. Now let's go forward.
Okay, good stuff. So we made the lawyers happy, right? Okay.
Yeah. So this is an opportunity. We literally just funded. We actually funded different chunks of this deal from different funds. From Temple Grove, we funded equity in this deal, and from Temple Opportunity, we funded part of the debt in the deal. But to make long story short, it's an acquisition of an 88 units residence Inn by Marriott in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It's an older asset, 86, but it's been recently, well, not recently, but it's been renovated 7-8 years ago, and it's in decent shape. And the property was foreclosed on by the lender, and the lender wanted to get rid of it. As you can imagine, foreclosed property on lender's balance sheet is a difficult. It's a bad thing today,
Mike. So just so we understand here, so this is a Marriott property, and it was already foreclosed on. I mean, the COVID crisis.
It was struggling.
Started maybe in early February. Yeah. Okay. It was struggling before that. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
So the
COVID, he said. Good.
Any possibility of salvation here has gone completely away with the COVID. So there are a number of hotels that were struggling before, and they are struggling now, and that's the opportunity.
Okay.
You don't need to find something that got hurt by COVID directly. It made it worse by COVID. So.
Sure.
From a conversion standpoint, the good news was that they had kitchens installed. These are like small apartments. Residents in the design as apartment-like hotel units, and they're perfect for a conversion opportunity. 11 building, almost 50,000 rentable square feet, and there are all kinds of hotel amenities, which is a great thing. And then there's a proximity to Wake Forest University, about a mile away. And then there is a Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center in a driving distance as well. So from a investment perspective, this looks very attractive. From community improvement perspective, it is already zoned for this, and the city would love nothing more than get rid of an old dysfunctional hotel and put together some apartments in an affordable range. So it all the check boxes you need to check on a project like this, no matter you're in a Democratic city or Republican city. This thing is a good, solid idea for any market. And we've previously invested in another project in Mesa, Arizona. We have one more coming up in Indiana, off the top of my head, in the South Bend, Indiana. So let's go back to the. I'd
like to look at this slide. Yeah, this is the interesting one, I think. But
yeah, acquisition price $4.6 million. There is a rehab budget. There are reserves, some legal and some soft costs. So all in cost is about $5.9 million. The equity, the capital stack looks like $1.5 million equity. There's a senior debt, $3 million, and mass debt, $1.4 million. The reason it's done this way is because the equity investment, to magnify the return to equity, it needs to have proper leverage. To get bank money for this project is extremely hard. So the banks don't want to finance this. So it's a private investors earning a 9% yield in the first lien, and then the second lien is paying 12%. And then the common equity is projected to make return in the mid-20s. So the risk
why
reward.
Why don't the banks like this deal?
Environment right now. I mean, you started the whole conversation where the banks are now increasing the
reserve.
In general,
okay.
Right now, the timing, the banks are nervous about this environment, and they're increasing reserves. They don't want to make new investments other than extremely safe stuff. any kind of development or development, new construction is hard to finance now. What banks do want to fund is a stabilized asset. The moment this thing becomes stabilized, the banks will happily refinance, because the Fannie Freddie guaranteed mortgages are available, but the bridge loans are not a bank product. So it's sort of getting financed with kind of a form of a hard money. Not really hard, but it's it's not bank money. It's 9% first lien, 12% second lien.
Yeah, that's expensive. That's expensive debt there. I mean,
it is
9 and 12%. Yeah,
it is. But the project
how?
makes. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What's your time horizon on this deal? How fast are you going to flip this over?
So 18 months full refinancing. Well, not full, but a significant refinancing, probably return of 60% of capital and repayment of all debt.
Have the zoning authorities already agreed to the deal?
Yes.
To let you do the reuse? Yeah.
Yes.
Was that
yes.
how difficult was that? Because nothing's easier than working with the government. I'm kidding, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. In this particular case, please remember, I'm a fund manager. I'm not an operator. We know the operator.
Yeah.
So the operator was able to obtain it fairly easily. That's what they do. Their whole specialties and conversion of these type of assets to affordable housing today.
Right. Yeah.
So they were
good
able
stuff,
to
good
do
stuff.
this.
What else would you like us to know? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say this is a trend, and this will continue to be a trend. Is this for everybody? No, it is for specialty investors. I believe it's a great space, and that's why we're investing in the space.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. So, what else? I mean, do you think this is the hottest thing in the, for people that are doing bigger deals like you are with your fund? Is this the best asset class of all? I mean, I know you just did an apartment deal, and that's traditional apartment, been used as apartments for, since it was developed years ago. But these conversions, I mean, how expensive are they? And it's really, really affordable type. These are small units. These are,
that's right.
They're hotel rooms, obviously. So, what other thoughts do you have about it?
So you can't say it's the best deal or the worst deal. It's a line of deals, right? It's a trend that's happening. It is, all real estate is local. So in every market, some markets it might make sense, and some other ones it might not. I certainly like this. As you know, we've been investing in value-add multifamily. We continue to like this sector. It is a little different from single-family residential as you sell. But at the same time, lots of people can't afford. I mean, it comes down to affordability. We've had this discussion. If people can afford their own house, they would. If they can't afford a house, then they take an apartment. It comes down to affordability. That's the primary driver.
Is anybody turning these things into little tiny condos? Are there any condo conversions, or is all strictly apartment?
I have not yet seen condominium conversions because these things are not set up with their own.
They're not
water
separately
heater
metered for utilities.
Yeah,
right,
from that perspective. There are many other trends there are old trends, and they're getting acceleration. There's newer trends. Obviously, retail to self-storage conversion continues to be a trend. We continue to invest in that. You have to be mindful that the market has been oversupplied. There are some industrial deals that are pretty interesting, but it's like a precision. It's not a general trend. If you find the right industrial conversion, that's great. If you don't find it, it's a different discussion.
What's the industrial conversion though, Mike? What conversion is it?
The Amazon effect, right? People want distribution centers. If you find the right buildings.
It's warehouse. Okay.
The warehouse, the dark supermarket.
I'm wondering if if those current use industrial properties will be hurt by the mall and retail, big box retail centers being reused, because all these Sears stores, are those all going to become Amazon distribution centers? And really, that's a lot easier, because that could be a store where people come to pick up their stuff as well as doing distribution. where they, they've got tons of parking at a shopping mall, of course, right? So they could have their trucks and their vans, but people could also do pickups there very easily because they're all well located in residential areas where, people were used to shopping before. So, I think that could actually hurt the industrial side of it, right?
It could. It's an additional supply of potentially dark supermarkets, distribution centers. I concur with you. But at the same time, this thing is getting repositioned. So retail is not completely disappearing. A lot of it is just getting integrated between the mobile app, between the web app, and then the in-store location. I literally went to Best Buy yesterday, and my basic observation was that we went in the store, we asked for something, they don't have it. You can order it in the store and they'll deliver it to you, or you can order online and they'll deliver it to you, or you can order online, you could pick it up in the store. It becomes
Right.
Whatever's convenient for you. That's the purpose of that. It's used more of a showroom, but very few people nowadays actually pick up stuff in the store. Delivery seems to be dominating the industry. Will they hurt other industrial? Maybe. It's hard to say. It all depends. Location is everything. Convenience makes all the difference in the world. Even though, and that's why the move to suburbs, right? The cities have lost sort of its dominance because of the traffic and now COVID. But at the end of the day, wherever people move, if there's a location that's convenient to them or they get delivered, it doesn't make any difference. So it's all about convenient distribution centers for wherever people live. And we're kind of flexible, dynamic. This trend with the hotels is something that has been accelerating in the post-COVID environment. And I feel that it's just another area of opportunity. People don't need to live somewhere. And especially with big cities losing population, some of the smaller cities can pick up and accelerate their development and their overall economy growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Mike, do you want to grab some questions here? We've got them coming in, and I've got to put some of these on here. So Michael says, do you do things in developing nations? I have a project where I can get RV, meaning rent to value ratio, of 9 to 12%. Well, I don't know what you mean by RV of 9 to 12%. Do you mean per month? Because when you look at worldwide real estate investing, they commonly quote what they call rental yields. That's a metric that not many US people say, but they'll talk about rental yields and they're always annualized. So that's something they might say 9 to 12% rental yield. I'm really doubting you're getting 9 to 12% per month, meaning if the value were $100,000, you'd be getting $9,000 to $12,000 per month. No way. That can't be true. And I'd really love to know what country. I've been to 87 countries, and some of them I've been to many, many times. I used to love to travel. I haven't traveled much lately, that's for sure. And I'm loving not traveling, actually, for a change. But I'm getting a little antsy. Got to go on a trip soon. Anyway, I've looked at properties all over the planet. I've met with brokers in so many countries, I couldn't even count them. I've looked at deals in so many countries, and I just don't find anything that even comes close to U.S. real estate. U.S. has a very special real estate market and also a very special financing market. The financing in the U.S. is highly desirable. So, Michael, please go to jasonhartman.com/ask. And let me know what country and more details about that deal. And Mike's probably thinking, gosh, if that deal is that good and it's in a somewhat stable, politically stable country, he might have investors even. I don't know if you'd look at something like that, Mike.
Jason, honestly, we invest in where we understand the business. So we invest here. We don't invest outside of the United States. That's the short answer to the question. We invest with people who know, like, trust in the markets that we know, and like.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with you. But I'm saying if that deal is as good as it sounds like it might be,
9 to 12% a month. I can't believe it. 9 to 12% a month is too high, unrealistic, and 9 to 12% a year is too low.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so Steve Rush is asking, can you tell people that even though you cannot evict people, you can still take them to court and get a judgment against them? Plus, makes it a lot easier because you know where they are. Oh, Steve, that is a super interesting point. I'm glad you brought that up. So, in other words, what he's saying is with these eviction moratoriums that have scared a lot of landlords, you can have a tenant in your property not paying, you can't evict them in some places, and with certain types of financing on the property. So there's quite a few layers to that onion, just so you know, it's not black and white. Okay. It's not like some simple blanket thing, first off. But even though you can't, Steve really raises a good point. You can still serve them. You know where they live. It's easier to serve them. You don't have to do any skip tracing if they're in the house. So you can serve them, take them to court, and get a judgment against them while they are occupying property. That's really interesting. And Steve, I think that's a very good point, and that would certainly motivate tenants to be good citizens and not take advantage of the situation. I think, Mike, isn't that a great point Steve brings up?
It's a great idea. The question is where you're at. If you're in New York, you can't even serve them. You can't do anything. The courts will not allow you to get the order to serve. So it really depends where you're at. If you're local,
is that true in New York? You're not asking. Remember, you're not asking for an unlawful detainer. You're not asking to evict. You're not asking for that right. You're asking for the right to the money judgment. That's it. They can stay, but you get the money judgment.
I don't know for sure, but I can tell you that in places like New York, they'll probably making it extremely difficult. So I don't know whether you could start the lawsuit to evict them.
I agree.
Eviction is a lawsuit.
Yeah.
If they say, hey, you can't start the lawsuit, good luck.
Yeah.
You just have to sit in your hands until they allow you to do that.
Right. And that is true. And that's why we do not recommend landlord unfriendly jurisdictions. So good point. And thanks, Steve, for bringing that up. That's a very interesting point. And David, who was on the show before, he's one of our clients. He says, yay for great news. Thank you, David. Appreciate that. I hope you and Gina are doing well. And Brent says the same. This was when I was talking about Coco. So we got some people responding to that. Thank you, Brent. And Ultimate Bargains, thank you. I wish you guys would put your names on here so we could address you properly. And Peter said right at the beginning, our feed is skipping. It's not skipping over here. I'm actually watching it on two phones. I'm watching the Facebook feed and the YouTube feed. So I don't know. I think that might be on your end, Peter, but thanks for letting us know. And then Peter says, question, why would I hire any US or EU person for white-collar jobs when I can get someone better in Southeast Asia who is superior in skills, works for less compensation, and with no labor regulations? Well, I'd like to know what country, Peter, and I'd like to know what type of job you're asking them to perform. But certainly, we all know about outsourcing and offshoring, and a lot of people are doing it. So I think you raise a good point. But I would like you to be more specific if you want to post again and say what country or countries and what type of jobs. Is that for, are you manufacturing something offshore, or are you hiring someone to do virtual assistant type task, or both? I'd be really curious about that. And
Jason, I have a quick comment.
Steve Rush, who asked a question earlier, or who posted about that, says he's Madison, Wisconsin. Go ahead, Mike.
Quick commentary. Take Philippines and accounting.
Can you hear me, Mike?
Yes. So an example is Philippines and accounting. That whole sector is getting massively outsourced, and there's significant population of well-educated Philippine population that's taking on accounting jobs with the same type of less regulation, lower cost, and doing it. In IT years ago used to be India, obviously, and it's a trend. It'll continue to be a trend. It comes down to the cost and the U.S. regulation. If it's making it very difficult to do business here, then outsourcing makes a ton of sense. So that is, there's nothing new on that. Remember the good old movie called Outsourced? I don't know if you remember that movie, but if you haven't watched it, watch it. A really old movie. So
Well, hey, I don't think I saw that. Oh, really? Okay. Well, listen, it's like anything. Money always goes where it's treated bad, right? So if money gets more value for its exchange in a foreign country, that's where it's going to go for sure. So Steve says Madison, Wisconsin. Now, Steve, I don't know if that relates to the money judgment discussion earlier, if that's just where you're located. If you're in Madison, that is going to be a 10-friendly left-wing market. Of course, you already know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And probably not favorable to landlords. So if you can get the money judgment there, even though you can't evict, good for you. That's great. And thanks for raising that interesting point. Okay, ultimate bargains. Have you considered condominiumizing the hotels to convert to residential hotels or condotels? This could provide a good source of financing by selling condo units. And you probably posted that before I asked the question about that. One of the problems, like Mike raised here, is these units aren't separately metered. So, especially the electricity. If you do water, and those hotels won't have gas because they probably don't have gas stoves. They're probably electric. But the electricity for air conditioning can get very expensive, and not having it separately metered is really a problem. So that's going to be one of the problems with turning these into condos, because there's no way a homeowners association can properly administer electricity use, right? In an apartment, you can do that a little bit better, but in a condo, it's pretty hard. It can be done, but those HOAs don't usually work out well. So that's one of the
one quick comment on this.
Difficult to condoize.
So Jason, one quick comment in addition to that. So besides utilities being a challenge, also location. We're converting hotels in the neighborhoods that are good for affordable housing. They work pretty well as apartments. As condos, your demand for acquisition of condos may not be the same as demand for rental in those areas. So if you're talking about a nice hotel in New York City, you can turn it into condo hotel, and that makes a ton of sense. A number of them are actually having problems. I've heard some really interesting, some of the big names, Hiltons, they're beginning to close doors, and there's going to be massive oversupply in New York, as it's an example. Can they be converted to condos? Yes.
Yeah.
Except for
I've already
there's too many damn condos here. So,
except for New York has got its own set of problems. We get it. But I'm curious, Mike, and maybe you don't know the answer to this. On that deal you talked to us about, what is the per unit rent for those little tiny units? I mean, what would they sell for as condos? Would these be like little, $60,000 condos? I mean, they're tiny little hotel rooms. So, what's the rent per unit on those?
The exit price of the asset is 8 point some million. It's about $100,000 a door. So you could sell them at $100,000 a door with a rent, $800 a month in that range. Can you sell them as condos at $100,000?
That seems like a pretty high rent. Where's that located again? Where was that deal? I know you're looking at a couple of them, but where was that?
Winston-Salem.
Winston-Salem. Yeah. $800 a door for those little units. I mean,
well, they're not little. Remember,
you can get a house for $1,200.
You can. I mean, the small house is possible. So it really depends. But I don't think they work as condos. Not those apartments. They're much better off as a multifamily.
Okay. All right, so we got a question here. How do you pronounce that name? Is that Mayor? Sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right. What happens when COVID ends after the election? Yes, COVID may just suddenly disappear depending on who's elected, because maybe it's all fake news, right? Fair enough. That's why I call it COVID 1984. So referring to George Orwell, of course, and the Orwellian nightmare it's becoming. So what happens when it ends after the election? Residents kicked out to convert them back to a hotel? I don't know. That's
No, that
I don't think the
hotel
hotel business is coming back anytime soon. Yeah.
exactly that particular location, the hotel didn't function well before COVID. So at this point, its highest and best use is apartments. So there's no it's a one-way door. You become an apartment complex, you can't go back to hotel. End of question.
Right. Here's another one about your deal, Mike. Wow, I'm in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and familiar with this area that the property is in. Okay, so I wish you would have told us something about it, Marco, or macro. Oh no, Quantalytics Macro Finance. Yeah, you asked some questions before. Thank you for participating. So, what do you think of that deal? I'm curious because you live there, so you're familiar with it. That's great. Okay, Paul says, question for Mike. Do you have to be an accredited investor for accredited? Yes, I think so, right, Mike? You have to be accredited?
Yes.
Okay. And by the way, for our listeners that don't know, just define accredited investor for us.
Accredited investor at a very high level is an individual who is single that makes $200,000 a year, or married who makes $300,000 a year for the last 2 years, or has a net worth of $1 million or more outside of their primary residence. That's the general high-level definition.
Good stuff. Okay, so yes, you got to be accredited. Okay, so Ultimate Bargains is back. FYI, residence-owned hotels that I've stayed at are very spacious units, have separate bedrooms. Yes, I've stayed at them too, so I know that. But that's
nice
not all of these hotels that are being converted.
That's
yeah,
right.
they're 700 square feet or maybe 800 even.
By the way, we do have another complex in Mesa, Arizona, conversion downtown Mesa, Arizona, where much smaller units, and the rents are there probably $650 a month. They're studios.
Yeah.
These residents in the bigger units for sure.
Yeah. Okay, Mitch Russo. Hey, Mitch, how are you? Mitch is a friend and neighbor, somewhat neighbor of mine. Got to travel. Can't wait to get back out there. Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of thinking that way too. I want to go on a European river cruise again. I really enjoyed that. I think that's the best kind of cruise, is a European river cruise. And none of them are running that I can see. I mean, I've looked,
Jason,
So,
don't get me
Ultimate
started on
Bargains is
cruises.
back, says the government is lawless. Yeah. No, I know you like to cruise, Mike. Yes, you're a cruiser for sure. But you're talking about ocean cruises for you. And I like
Yeah,
ocean
but
cruises.
they all shut down, all of them.
I know. Something else. Okay, the government is lawless when the courts won't abide by their constitutional duty. Yes, that is true. That's a sad thing when you get these activist left-wing judges in these, jurisdictions like Northern California. It's a freaking disaster. I mean, it's unbelievable. Okay, David says, question from Southern California, my old home. Can I use a self-directed IRA to invest in Mike's properties? Jason, I am sure you've covered this before, but would love to hear a show on self-directed IRAs. Hey, David, we'll do that for you. No problem. And Mike, I think you're going to say yes about that. You can use self-directed IRA, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our funds have a lot of self-directed IRA investors and one-off deals as well. So we are more than welcome self-directed IRA investors. But you have to be an accredited investor. That is the requirement.
Yep. Okay, so Jacko says, hi from Denmark. And I was in Denmark a lot last year. I said that to you last week, I think, Jacko, because you posted then. We'll look at expanding into new markets like Arizona, where new lithium mines are being planned to support the electric vehicle market. Yes, that is true, but Arizona is a little expensive. So that's become, the major cities in Arizona, I'll say. Okay. FYI, RUBS, ratio utility billing system, can be an effective alternative to separate units. Yeah, I know there are ways to do it. And with technology, it's a lot easier than it used to be, because you can meter at the thermostat, right? So, you can actually do the metering there, and at least that'll cover the air conditioning, which is usually, well, depending on where the property is, about 37% of the electrical usage. So air conditioning is obviously a big deal. So yes, thank you for bringing that up. Ultimate Bargains. And Mitch says, crypto miners would love free electricity. Yes, they certainly would. Yes, you'd have a bunch of crypto miners go into your hotel conversion unit for the free electricity. Mitch, that's a good point you raise. Yeah, really interesting. Okay. Quantalytics Macro Finance says former name is Quincy. Hey, that's a good name for that. Here in Winston-Salem, it is more favorable to own versus rent. Rent prices are high compared to mortgage payments for similar size property. That's a good point. And that means you're probably in a somewhat linear market if owning is better, because the house prices are probably pretty reasonable. Good stuff. And Rubs, oh, we already went over that one. Well, maybe you posted that twice. It's a slightly different statement, but yes, I get it. Okay, Nathan says, where are your top cities to buy rental properties in? Well, if you want to know that, just go to jasonhartman.com and click on the properties page, and you'll see the markets we are most active in right now. But generally speaking, linear suburban markets, that's what we like. Absolutely. That's where the, as Wayne Gretzky said, I skate to where the puck is going, and that's where the puck is going. It's been going there for a while, but COVID's accelerated it. So thank you for that question, Nathan. And okay, Quantalytics back here. Good idea. This area is good for rentals. There's a high number of apartments in this area, but I think rental demand is increasing for more higher priced homes people cannot afford. They're downsizing. Yes. And that's the interesting thing about the type of rental property we've been recommending for the last 16 years. You catch people moving up or down the economic ladder. Either they're moving out of their house, living at home with parents, so they're essentially moving up the economic ladder, going out on their own, or the economy's bad. They used to be a homeowner, they recycle back into the rental market, or they move down to a less expensive rental. And if you are one of our investors, you can provide that rental property to them. So it's great, very safe investment in that way. Nathan says, how long will low mortgage interest rates last in your opinion? Mike, you might have something to say about this, because what we didn't mention is you run a hard money lending company. And why don't you go first on that one, and I'll go next.
I do have a grand conspiracy theory. Incredible low interest rates are here to stay. And I do actually think we're moving towards Japan model negative interest rates. The grand conspiracy theory is that the US government, with the printing press completely out of control, the debt is just accelerating. It's going to be unable to pay anything other than zero negative interest rates. There's a reason why rates go negative, because negative rates are better than a default. So as U.S. national debt continues to spiral out of control, the rates will go lower, lower, and then go into negative. That is my strong belief. And so the rates are never going to go up. Maybe temporarily you'll see some short-term spikes, but long-term they're going negative.
So the risk of a default that you talk about, you mean a default on government bonds, treasuries?
Yes,
exactly. What's the default risk? Yeah. Okay.
The default risk is zero with the US when they push the rates into negative territory. What it means is they could print, the national debt could be $100 trillion, and the debt service will be nothing when the rates are zero or negative. That's the driver of the rates going negative, to avoid the default.
Okay. Yep. I agree. I think rates are going to stay low for a while. This Fed chair we have, rich uncle Jerome Powell, our rich uncle. He has been very open, and in fact, I think he's one of the most. He's the clearest Fed chair that we've had. In my adult life. I mean, Greenspan spoke in code. It was hard to decipher what he was talking about. But Powell just says, look, you need money, we're going to give it to you. We're going to stimulate. So he's bones about it. Really is interesting. Okay. Lydia says, regarding equity stripping, what is better, a $920,000, mortgage at 1.9%, or a $770,000 line of credit, and we are offering options? Isn't that incredible? You get 1.92. Must buying that down. You must be down. I cannot. That's incredible. How much is the property worth? I'd love to know, like, where it is, what type of property it is. that is really, Mike, can you use that? Is that a typo? I mean,
Jason, you're a little bit choppy on the stream, but the big question is it 1.92% for 30 years,
Yeah.
or what's the term? My theory today, and again, it's my personal opinion, it really depends on the circumstances of the borrower, and if they need the cash, if they can benefit from a usage of a line where they repay and then borrow again, repay, borrow again. I prefer a line because of the ability to pay down and then reborrow. And it is consistent with my theory that the rates are going into negative territory. So as long as the theory holds, the line should work better. If you are afraid of rates going up somehow, then you're better off with a fixed long-term debt at 192%.
Mike, that's interesting that you do that. I'm going to disagree with you. I don't prefer the loan. I'd rather have the long-term fixed rate loan. If that's a 30-year loan, I really doubt it is. It's probably a 15-year loan, or something like that. But yeah, we'd have to know a little more. But that's a pretty incredible deal. Okay, I'm gonna switch over to a couple of slides and then we'll wrap it up. But we got a bunch more questions here. By the way, folks, if we don't get to your question, again, I can't stay as long today. The last 2 weeks we did over 2 hours both times. If we don't get to them, just go to jasonhartman.com/ask and we'll answer your question on the Creating Wealth podcast. Okay. So if interest rates go to 0 or negative, what does it mean for new mortgages? Will we be able to borrow at 0%? I doubt it on the mortgages. When he talks about negative interest rates or 0 interest rates, that's really just the rates the banks get to borrow at. You're not going to probably see that yourself, but it gets closer and closer. Mike, thoughts?
Yeah, so what I'm referring to is the treasuries, right? So we're talking about 10-year treasury, 2-year, those will go negative. The mortgage interest rates will still stay positive. The banks need to earn some kind of a spread. So the spread, traditional good old days used to be 400 basis points. Now it's going to be smaller. So my guess is going to be the rates are going to be slightly positive. When the treasuries go negative, the mortgage rates probably will be 2%, 1.5%, maybe even 1% range, but they'll still be positive. They will not be negative because there has to be a spread between the cost of money, which is negative, and the rate they collect on the mortgage, because there's some risk associated with that, even if these are government insured mortgages.
Okay, we are getting got one more complaint from Adam that our YouTube feed is skipping. I don't know. Sorry, folks. You can always watch the replay, and that should solve it. So the replay stays on Facebook and YouTube indefinitely. Okay, Nathan says Biden's tax plan wants to, get rid of the depreciation tax shield and 1031 exchanges. Will it be worth investing in rental properties if he wins? I don't know yet, but I have not heard that about depreciation with his plan. I have heard he wants to eliminate the 1031 exchange. Remember, there's always an equalizing factor in every market. That's always what happens. So if first of all, I doubt that'll happen, even though it's ridiculous and Biden is an idiot and he's senile. I mean, look, let's just face it. Even if you're a Democrat, if you vote for Biden, you're out of your mind. Okay. I mean, Biden is just, he's not fit. Now, all the Democrats would say, well, Trump's not fit because I hate Donald Trump and I have Trump derangement syndrome. Sure, that's all fine. I get it that Trump offends everybody. I understand that. But Biden is, he's just, he's not mentally there. It's quite obvious. Okay.
I have one
question.
One
what are your thoughts on cash ban with Fed going? Okay. All right. Oh, no, let's get political. Go ahead.
Final comment. Thank God to the split government, right? We have, as long as the Republicans have at least 40 seats in the Senate, they can block anything. That's the good news about the U.S. government. When the measures get really extreme and one party starts pushing something really crazy and they win the presidency and they win the House, and as long as the Senate can block it, that'll be sufficient. I believe that the real estate is such an important sector for the economy that they won't let them get rid of the major benefits of real estate investing. That's my opinion.
And real estate has a huge lobby. That's the other thing you've got to understand, that the lobby behind the real estate world is giant. It's just giant. Okay. So we'll get to this one in a minute, but I just wanted to show you this chart. Home builder confidence is at its highest point in 22 years. There is a giant housing shortage, folks. It was already there pre-COVID, but it's even worse post-COVID. So it's really just incredible. This is from the National Association of Home Builders and the criminals at Wells Fargo, where they've got like a scandal every other week, right? Wells Fargo. I don't know. I don't want to just pick on Wells Fargo. They suck, but so do all the other banks. So what can I tell you? Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Okay, let's get back to that FedCoin question that we had there. What are your thoughts on cash ban with FedCoin? Well, listen, we're going to move toward we're moving away from cash, folks. That's no secret. The whole world is. And this is really scary stuff because it's one more area of privacy that we won't have anymore. We won't have spending privacy. So yes, it concerns me. And if there is a global digital fiat currency, that's checkmate. They can control everything we do, the powers that be. But I know a bunch of you are saying out there, well, that means I should go buy more Bitcoin and Ethereum and all that stuff. I don't know. I don't think so. I think the powers that be can make it illegal. I've discussed that ad nauseum. By the way, I run another podcast called the CryptoCast, and we talk about all these crypto issues in detail. Okay. All right. So I'm wrapping up these questions here, and let's grab this one from Nathan. Again, if interest rates go to zero, well, no, we answered that one already. Peter says, I theorize that large corporations will accelerate the outsourcing of many types of white-collar jobs now that COVID has exposed the fact that the office is largely unnecessary. I agree completely, Peter. I think that trend is only going to accelerate and get bigger. I'm sure Mike, by the way, you had an office before. Is your company totally virtual now? You're in Brooklyn, so.
Yeah, we've been virtual for a long time. We had.
Oh, okay.
We haven't had an office in a long time. We don't need an office, and don't think we'll ever need an office. And yeah, I mean, remember, I spent years before my full-time career in real estate. I spent almost 15 years in software, and
In
we
IT,
absolutely,
yeah.
we use offshoring and nearshoring. Nearshoring was Canada, and offshoring was India and other countries. And as I mentioned, Philippines are now picking up steam for the accounting, and the trend will continue as long as there's no need for physical presence. With technology evolution and what's happening, COVID is a wake-up call, massive wake-up call, and the trend will accelerate. I'm in agreement.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so Biden wants to get rid of stepped-up basis on inheritance. That does not surprise me at all, because the death tax is really one of the ways that you destroy this intergenerational wealth, right? And the left looks at that as a totally unfair privilege that you should be able to pass money to your children or your heirs of any kind. So that does not surprise me at all. Basically, he wants to confiscate private wealth. The trouble with socialism is they eventually run out of other people's money. That's a great Margaret Thatcher quote. I love that one. Yes, absolutely, you're right. And Nathan says, thanks so much. Our pleasure, Nathan. And Ultimate Bargains gives us a thumbs up. And Kyle says, morning, everyone. Macro question here. Would love to hear your thoughts and analysis on co-investing companies like Unison that take out an option contract on the future appreciation of your primary residence, 30 years, and using that cash to buy more properties. Lots of variables, of course, but wondering if a case study on your show, if you do a case study on your show, if it's worth it. That is interesting, Kyle. And, there are a lot of variables. You are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. Tons of variables, making it hard to analyze those equity sharing type option deals. Mike, have you looked at these at all? They're all over the board. They're pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm familiar with them only on the high level. And my 2 cents, the answer is it depends. If you're on a highly appreciating markets, probably not worth doing it. If you are in a steady Eddie market, it may be worth. Again, it really depends on the rate appreciation. So you have a mortgage, you have leverage appreciation. If your leverage return on equity is such that you could deploy the money better, yeah, then it's worth consideration. But if your average return on equity is high, then keep your equity. So,
yeah, those are hard. They make it pretty hard to analyze those deals. So we'd have to hear. You know what they should do is come on the show and pitch the deal to us, and then we'll tear it apart. But they may not like that very much. So, but that's a good way to look at it. At the bottom of your screen, I want to remind all of you, you can get a free report or mini book on pandemic investing. Just go to pandemicinvesting.com for that free book or report. It's kind of like a mini book, really. And a lot of people have really complimented us on that, and they've really enjoyed it. So go to pandemicinvesting.com for that, as well as jasonhartman.com. And Mike, let's wrap it up. I got to cut it short early today, folks. Sorry, I cannot stay with you for 2 hours, and Mike probably can't either. But Mike, any final thoughts on your side, and then I'll wrap it up for us.
No, I'm good. Just a final thought, again, not trying to be political, but running away from the socialists and communists, I can tell you that it just doesn't work, and you have to be extremely naive to really believe that socialism can work in the United States. It's just a destruction mechanism. It is a political ploy. It's a manipulation to get into power. So don't believe the hype. This hype is absolutely wrong. That's my 2 cents, and that's it. So,
yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. I agree completely. Socialism is nothing more than trickle up poverty. So don't believe it. We're in an election season, so we got to talk about this stuff, and we'll be back next week to talk about it more. The Creating Wealth podcast is on 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. So make sure you're subscribing on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever podcast platform you use, the Creating Wealth Show. If you're interested in crypto, my Crypto Cast is there as well. Short-term rentals. I have a short-term rental profits podcast. That market has been turned upside down. So a lot to talk about there. And of course, pandemicinvesting.com. You can get your free mini book there. And Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. Was this your first live stream? I know you've done a lot of webinars and so forth, but I hope you enjoyed this.
I think I've done another one with a couple of other fund managers who are running a show. I've been on a couple of shows, and yeah, so I I guess it wasn't my first one. It was my second one. So. Good stuff. Well, I hope you enjoyed it, and you can consider using it in your business. And thanks for coming on today and sharing your ideas. And everybody, I want to wish you happy investing, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.